The ship was massive. It blocked out the stars like a metal moon, casting a shadow over the small human fleet that waited in silence. Ambassador Cyravel stood at the viewing window of her transport vessel, her forearms folded behind her back. Her pale blue skin glowed softly in the dim light of the cabin. She had done this many times before, 347 times, to be exact. That was how many species the dominion of the Vethkai had conquered. Some had fought, some had begged, some had tried to run. None had survived as free beings. Today would be no different. The humans were young. Their civilization was barely 1,000 years old. Their technology was primitive compared to the might of the Dominion. This would be easy. The transport docked with the human flagship. It was called the Resolute. Cyravel found the name amusing. Every species thought they were resolute until they saw what was coming for them. The airlock opened with a hiss. Cyravel stepped through, followed by her 2 guards. They were tall and muscular, their bodies covered in ceremonial armor that had been worn during the subjugation of 100 worlds. A human officer waited on the other side. He was shorter than Cyravel had expected. His hair was gray, and there were lines on his face that spoke of age and experience. He wore a simple uniform with metal pins on his chest. "Ambassador Cyravel," he said, extending one of his 2 hands. "I am Admiral Marcus Cole. Welcome aboard the Resolute." Cyravel stared at his hand for a moment. She had studied human customs. This was a greeting ritual. She reached out with one of her lower arms and shook it briefly. "Admiral Cole," she said, "I am here to deliver the terms of your surrender." She watched his face carefully. This was the moment when most species began to show fear. Their eyes would widen, their bodies would tense. Some would start to sweat or tremble. Admiral Cole simply nodded. "Of course. Please, follow me. I have prepared a conference room for our discussion. Would you like some tea?" Cyravel blinked her 3 eyes in confusion. "Tea? It is a hot beverage, very popular among my people. I find it helps during difficult conversations." She did not know how to respond to this. In her experience, difficult conversations involved screaming and pleading, not hot beverages. "Very well," she said. The Admiral led her through the corridors of the ship. Cyravel observed everything carefully. The walls were plain metal. The floors were clean but worn from use. Crew members passed by them, nodding respectfully to their admiral. None of them seemed worried. None of them even seemed curious about the alien walking among them. This was strange. When the Dominion arrived at a new world, the population usually panicked. Cities would empty. Governments would collapse. Species that had never known war would tear themselves apart in fear before the first shot was even fired. But these humans just walked past her like she was nothing special. The conference room was simple. A large table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs. A window on one wall showed the stars outside. A young human woman was already there, setting down cups and a steaming pot. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Admiral Cole said. "That will be all." The woman nodded and left. Cyravel sat down, and the Admiral sat across from her. He poured the brown liquid into 2 cups and pushed one toward her. "Now then," he said, taking a sip from his cup. "You mentioned surrender terms?" Cyravel straightened in her chair. This was familiar territory. She activated the holographic projector built into her wrist, and the room filled with images. "The Dominion of the Vethkai controls 6 spiral arms of this galaxy," she began. "We have existed for over 2 million years. In that time, we have encountered 347 intelligent species. All of them now serve the Dominion." She waved her hand, and the images changed. Ships appeared, thousands of them, tens of thousands. They stretched across the display like a swarm of metal insects. "This is our fleet. 10,000 warships. Each one is capable of destroying a small moon. We have weapons that can crack planets open like eggs. We have biological agents that can reduce entire populations to mindless beasts within hours." She paused to let this sink in. Usually, by now, her audience was trembling. Admiral Cole took another sip of his tea. Cyravel felt a flicker of annoyance. She continued, "We have studied your species, Admiral. You have 800 ships. Most of them are barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Your weapons are primitive. Your defenses are laughable. You have no allies, no support, and no hope of victory." She changed the images again. Now they showed planets, beautiful planets with blue oceans and green continents. Then they showed those same planets burning, cracked, dead. This is what happens to species that resist, she said. The Korvan resisted. Their homeworld is now an asteroid field. The Thessari resisted. Their entire species now lives in labor camps, bred like animals for our factories. The Morthak resisted. They no longer exist at all. She leaned forward, her 3 eyes fixed on the Admiral's face. I am here to offer you a choice, Admiral Cole. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to live. You will serve the Dominion, yes. Your freedom will end, but you will survive. Your children will survive. Your civilization will continue in some form. She paused. Refuse, and everything you have ever built will be destroyed. Your cities will burn. Your people will die screaming. Your planet will become a monument to your foolishness, a warning to any other species that thinks they can stand against the Dominion. Cyravel sat back. She had given this speech many times. It always worked. The fear in their eyes, the trembling in their voices, the desperate pleas for mercy. It was always the same. Admiral Cole set down his teacup. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the images of destroyed worlds still floating in the air between them. Then he smiled. Is that all? He asked. Cyravel felt something cold move through her body. It was not possible. No species had ever responded this way. Not once in 2 million years of conquest. I do not think you understand, she said slowly. I am offering you the chance to survive. This is not a negotiation. This is your only option. The Admiral shrugged. I understood you perfectly, Ambassador. You have a big fleet. You have scary weapons. You have destroyed other civilizations. And you want us to be afraid. He stood up and walked to the window. The stars reflected in his eyes. Here is the thing, Ambassador. We have been expecting someone like you. Maybe not you specifically, but someone. Something. The universe is very large, and we always knew we were not alone. We knew that someday, something would come for us. He turned back to face her. We have been afraid of that moment our entire existence as a species. We have written stories about it, made movies about it, had nightmares about it, and now that moment is here. He smiled again, and this time Cyravel saw something in his eyes that she did not recognize, something that made her feel very small. So no, Ambassador, we will not surrender. We will not beg. We will not run. If you want our planet, you will have to take it from us. And I promise you this. It will cost you more than you can possibly imagine. He sat back down and picked up his tea. Now, would you like some sugar? It helps with the bitterness. Cyravel said nothing. For the first time in her long career, she did not know what to say. She had come here expecting fear. Instead, she had found something else entirely, something that, for reasons she could not explain, made her afraid. Cyravel could not sleep. She lay in the small cabin the humans had given her, staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept returning to Admiral Cole's smile. That strange, knowing smile that had made her feel like prey instead of predator. It did not make sense. The Vethkai were the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had crushed civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Humanity was young, and weak, and alone. They should have been terrified, but they were not. In the morning, she requested a cultural exchange. It was standard procedure before any conquest. Understanding a species helped in controlling them afterward. The humans agreed immediately. They assigned her a guide. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez. She was a small woman with dark hair and warm brown eyes. She smiled a lot, which Cyravel found disturbing. In her experience, prey animals did not smile at their predators. Where would you like to begin? Elena asked, as they walked through the corridors of the ship. I want to understand your species, Cyravel said. I want to know why you are not afraid. Elena nodded thoughtfully. That is a big question, but I think I can help you find the answer. Follow me. She led Cyravel to a large room filled with screens and holographic projectors. It was some kind of archive or library. Elena sat down at a control panel and began pressing buttons. Most species show visitors their greatest achievements, Elena said. Their art, their music, their scientific discoveries. They want to impress. They want to seem strong. She looked at Cyravel with those warm brown eyes. We are going to show you something different. We are going to show you what we really are. The lights dimmed. The screens came to life. Cyravel watched as images appeared before her. At first, she did not understand what she was seeing. There were humans fighting other humans. They wore primitive clothing and carried simple weapons made of metal. They hacked at each other with swords and spears. Blood covered the ground. "This is from about 3,000 years ago," Elena said quietly. "We call it the Bronze Age. Humans were already killing each other by the millions. The images changed. Now the weapons were different. Louder. More destructive. Siravel saw massive armies marching across fields. She saw cities burning. She saw bodies piled so high they formed hills. "This is from about 500 years ago," Elena continued. "We call it the 30 Years' War. 8 million dead. Entire regions were emptied of life." Siravel said nothing. She had seen war before. Many species fought among themselves before the Dominion arrived to unite them through conquest. But the scale of what she was seeing was disturbing. The images kept coming. They became worse. She saw trenches filled with men in gray and brown uniforms. She saw clouds of green gas drifting over the battlefield. Men screamed and clawed at their faces as the gas burned their lungs from the inside. They died in agony, drowning in their own blood. "World War I," Elena said. 20 million dead. We invented new ways to kill each other. Poison gas, machine guns, tanks, bombs dropped from flying machines. Before Siravel could process this, the images changed again. Now she saw cities disappearing in flashes of white light. Mushroom clouds rose into the sky like the fingers of angry gods. She saw the shadows of humans burned into stone walls. Their bodies vaporized in an instant. "World War II," Elena said. Her voice was flat now, empty of emotion. 70 million dead. We split the atom and used it to destroy 2 cities in seconds. We built factories designed only to kill people. Millions were murdered, simply because of their religion or their race. Siravel felt her secondary hearts beating faster. "You did this to yourselves?" "Yes." "Why?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "That is a complicated question. Fear, hate, greed, madness. We are not a simple species, Ambassador." The images continued. Siravel saw diseases sweeping across continents. She saw bodies stacked outside hospitals. She saw mass graves being filled with machines because there were too many dead to bury by hand. "Plagues," Elena explained. "We have had many. The Black Death killed half of Europe. The Spanish flu killed 50 million in 2 years. And there have been others. Many others." She saw famines. Children with swollen bellies and empty eyes. Parents eating grass and bark because there was nothing else. Bodies lying in the streets while others walked past, too weak to help. "Starvation," Elena said. "Millions have died from hunger throughout our history. Sometimes because of nature. Sometimes because other humans took their food." Siravel wanted to look away, but she could not. The images kept coming. Wars and plagues and famines and disasters. Earthquakes that swallowed cities. Floods that drowned millions. Fires that consumed entire forests with people still inside them. And through it all, she saw something that disturbed her more than the death itself. She saw humans surviving. In the middle of bombed cities, she saw children playing in the rubble. In the trenches filled with poison gas, she saw soldiers laughing and sharing cigarettes. In the camps where millions were murdered, she saw prisoners singing songs and telling stories. "Stop," Siravel said. Her voice was shaking. "Why are you showing me this?" Elena turned off the screens. The room was quiet now, lit only by soft emergency lights. "You wanted to understand why we are not afraid," she said. "This is why. We have been afraid our entire existence. We have faced extinction more times than we can count. We have done terrible things to each other. Things that would make your bioweapons look like toys." She stood up and walked closer to Siravel. "But we are still here. Every time something tried to destroy us, we survived. Every plague, every war, every disaster. We adapted, we endured, we rebuilt, and we kept going." Siravel stared at her. "You are saying that your own history has made you immune to fear?" "No," Elena said. "Fear is in our blood. It is in our bones. We feel it every day. But we have learned to live with it. We have learned to use it. Fear does not stop us, Ambassador. It drives us." She smiled, that strange human smile. "You want to threaten us with death? We have been dying since we first crawled out of the ocean. You want to show us destruction? We have destroyed ourselves 100 times and built ourselves back up again. You want to make us beg for mercy? We do not even give mercy to each other." Cyravelle remembered the holographic images of destroyed worlds she had shown Admiral Cole, the burning cities, the cracked planets. She had thought they would terrify the humans. Now she realized something terrible. The humans had already seen worse. They had already done worse. To themselves. Your people, Cyravelle said slowly. They know all of this. They know their own history. Every child learns it, Elena said. We do not hide from our past. We study it. We remember it. We carry it with us everywhere we go. Why? Why would you want to remember such horror? Elena's smile faded. Her eyes became hard. Because if we forget what we are capable of, we might become that thing again. And because when someone threatens us, we need to remember that we have faced worse and survived. She turned and walked toward the door. Get some rest, Ambassador. Tomorrow I will show you something else. Something that might help you understand why Admiral Cole smiled when you threatened to destroy us. Cyravelle sat alone in the archive room for a long time after Elena left. She thought about everything she had seen. The wars, the plagues, the endless suffering that humans had inflicted on themselves and endured. She had conquered 347 species. She had seen many terrible things, but she had never seen anything like this. For the first time in her career, she wondered if the Dominion had made a mistake in coming here. For the first time in her life, she was not sure who was the predator and who was the prey. 3 days passed on the human ship. 3 days of studying. 3 days of watching. 3 days of growing confusion and something that felt uncomfortably like fear. Cyravelle had requested more information about humanity. The humans had given her everything. They hid nothing. They showed her their literature, their films, their art. So much of it was about death, about struggle, about facing impossible odds and refusing to give up. She watched a film about a human ship that sank in cold water. Thousands died. But the humans did not remember it as a tragedy alone. They remembered the musicians who kept playing as the water rose. They remembered the crew members who gave their seats in the rescue boats to others. They remembered the love stories and the acts of courage. She read their poetry. So much of it was about darkness and pain, but also about hope, about fighting back against the dying of the light, about raging against the end. She studied their religions. Many of them promised suffering, pain, sacrifice, and yet billions of humans followed these faiths. They found comfort in the promise that their suffering had meaning. What kind of species found comfort in suffering? On the 4th day, Admiral Cole invited her to a formal dinner. It would be a chance to meet other human officers, he explained. A chance to discuss the situation in a more relaxed setting. Cyravelle accepted. She had one more test she wanted to try. The dining hall was large and brightly lit. Long tables were covered with white cloth and set with metal utensils. About 30 humans were present, all in their formal uniforms. They stood when Cyravelle entered, which she found oddly respectful. Admiral Cole greeted her warmly and led her to a seat at the head table. Food was served. Strange human food that Cyravelle had been warned about. She ate little, watching the humans around her. They laughed. They talked. They made jokes. Some of the jokes were about death, about war, about the coming invasion. They laughed about the thing that should have terrified them. Halfway through the meal, Cyravelle decided to test them. She reached under the table and pressed a button on her wrist device. It activated the neural projector. This was the Dominion's most powerful psychological weapon. It broadcast directly into the minds of every living being within range. The projector contained the death screams of 1,000 species, the final moments of billions of beings as they died under Vethkai weapons, the terror, the agony, the absolute despair of creatures who knew they were about to be erased from existence. It had broken entire civilizations. Species that had never known war would collapse into madness after just a few seconds of exposure. Even hardened warriors would fall to their knees, weeping and begging for the screaming to stop. The projector activated. Cyravelle watched the humans carefully. Their conversations stopped. Some of them winced. Others closed their eyes. A few gripped the edges of the table so hard their knuckles turned white. One young officer, barely more than a child, let out a small gasp of pain. For a moment, Cyravelle felt relief. Finally, a normal reaction. Then Admiral Cole picked up his fork and took another bite of his food. "That is a nasty trick, Ambassador," he said calmly. One by one, the other humans followed his lead. They opened their eyes. They released their grip on the table. They picked up their utensils and continued eating. Their conversations resumed, quieter now, but steady. Siravel stared at them in disbelief. A woman across the table caught her eye. She had short gray hair and a scar running down the side of her face. She smiled at Siravel, but it was not a kind smile. "We have something similar," the woman said. "We call it the evening news." The humans around her laughed. It was a dark laugh, bitter and knowing. Siravel turned off the projector. Her hands were shaking. This was impossible. No species had ever resisted the neural projector. No species had ever laughed about it. After the dinner, Admiral Cole invited her to his private office for a drink. She accepted, though she did not know why. Perhaps she was looking for answers. Perhaps she was looking for some sign of weakness she could report back to the Dominion. His office was small and simple. Books lined the walls, real books, made of paper. She had heard that humans still used such primitive things. There were pictures on his desk. A woman, children, a family. He poured 2 glasses of brown liquid and handed one to her. She did not drink it. "That projector of yours," he said, sitting down in a worn chair. "Where did you get those screams?" "They are the final moments of our conquered enemies," Siravel said. "Recorded and preserved as a weapon." Admiral Cole nodded slowly. "Clever. Use fear as a weapon. Break them before the first shot is fired. It has always worked before. I imagine it has." He took a sip of his drink. "You know what the difference is between your projector and our news broadcasts?" Siravel said nothing. "Your projector shows people the deaths of strangers. Aliens. Beings from far away that your targets have never met. It is abstract. Distant." He leaned forward. "Our news shows us the deaths of our own people, our neighbors, our children. Every day, we see images of murder and war and disaster. We watch our own species suffer and die. We do not need a projector to show us horror, Ambassador. We broadcast it to ourselves voluntarily." Siravel felt cold. "Why would you do such a thing?" "Because hiding from reality does not make it go away. Because if we pretend the darkness does not exist, it will surprise us when it comes. Better to stare into it every day and build up our tolerance." He finished his drink and set down the glass. "Your projector showed me the screaming of dying aliens. Do you want to know what I thought when I heard it?" Siravel nodded slowly. "I thought of my daughter. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. She was 12 years old. I held her hand while she took her last breath. I heard her cry in pain for months before the end." His voice was steady, but his eyes were distant. "No alien death scream will ever be worse than that memory, Ambassador. I carry it with me every moment of every day." Siravel did not know what to say. She had studied thousands of species. None of them had spoken to her like this. None of them had shown such calm acceptance of their own suffering. "You are a strange species," she finally said. "Yes," Admiral Cole agreed. "We are." They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Siravel asked the question that had been burning inside her since she first came aboard this ship. "Why are you not afraid of us? Your species is young. Your technology is inferior. We have destroyed civilizations that lasted 1,000,000 years. Why do you sit there as if we should be the ones worried?" Admiral Cole looked at her. His expression changed. The polite, friendly mask he had worn since she arrived fell away. Behind it, she saw something ancient, something cold, something that had looked death in the face so many times it no longer flinched. "Do you really want to know?" he asked. "Yes." He stood up and walked to the window. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and cold. "Then let me tell you a story about where we come from. Let me tell you about a place called Earth, and let me explain why nothing you can threaten us with will ever make us beg for mercy." He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her blood run cold. "Sit down, Ambassador. This is going to take a while." Admiral Cole stood by the window for a long moment, looking out at the stars. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. Somehow, that made it worse. "You have conquered 347 species," he said. "Tell me about them. What were they like before you arrived?" Siravel did not understand the question, but she answered anyway. "They were civilized, advanced. Many of them had existed for millions of years. They had built great cities and created beautiful art. They had solved the problems of hunger and disease. They lived in peace." "Peace," Admiral Cole repeated. "They lived in peace. With themselves, you mean?" They did not fight wars against each other. Some did, in their early history. But most had evolved beyond such primitive behavior long before we found them. The Admiral nodded slowly. And when you arrived with your fleet and your weapons, how did they react? Ciravel thought back to all the conquests she had witnessed. They were terrified. They did not understand what was happening. Many of them could not even comprehend the concept of deliberate destruction. They had never experienced true violence. When we demonstrated our power, most of them broke immediately. They surrendered. They begged. They could not process the idea that another species would want to hurt them. Because they had evolved past fear, Admiral Cole said. Because their worlds were kind. Their predators were few. Their environments were stable. They never needed to be afraid, so they never learned how. Yes, fear was a distant memory for most of them, a curiosity from their ancient past. Admiral Cole turned to face her. The starlight cast half his face in shadow. Now, let me tell you about Earth. He pressed a button on his desk. A holographic image appeared between them. A blue and green planet, swirling with white clouds. It looked peaceful, beautiful. This is our homeworld, he said. From space, it looks like paradise. But that is a lie. Earth is not a paradise. Ambassador, Earth is a death world. Ciravel leaned forward. She had heard this term before, but only in old records. Death worlds were planets where evolution had gone wrong, where every form of life was locked in an endless war for survival. Everything on our planet has been trying to kill us since before we were human, Admiral Cole continued. The animals hunt us. The plants poison us. The insects carry diseases that have killed billions. Even the bacteria in our soil and water can destroy us from the inside. The holographic image changed. Now it showed creatures. Massive predators with sharp teeth and claws. Snakes with venom that could kill in minutes. Spiders. Sharks. Things that looked like nightmares given flesh. We evolved as prey, Ambassador. We were not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were soft and weak and slow. Every day was a fight to survive. Every night was spent hiding from things that wanted to eat us. He waved his hand, and the image changed again. Now it showed humans, early humans, thin and fragile, huddled around fires and caves. Do you know what we learned from this? We learned to fear. We learned it before we learned to speak. Before we learned to think. Fear was our first teacher. It kept us alive when everything else wanted us dead. Ciravel felt something stirring in her chest. Something cold. But we did not just learn to fear, Admiral Cole continued. We learned to use fear. We learned that the things we feared could be hunted, could be killed, could be eaten. The predators that chased us became prey themselves. We turned our fear into aggression, into creativity, into survival. The image showed humans now. Humans with spears, hunting animals 10 times their size. Humans building walls, making weapons, spreading across the planet like a virus. We did not evolve in paradise, Ambassador. We evolved in hell. And we did not just survive it. We conquered it. Every predator that hunted us is now extinct or living in cages we built. Every disease that killed us has been studied and defeated. Every corner of our world that tried to destroy us has been claimed and tamed. He stepped closer to her. His eyes were cold now. Cold and ancient. You want to know why we are not afraid of you? It is not because we do not feel fear. We feel it more than any species you have ever encountered. Fear is in our blood. It is in our bones. It wakes us in the night and follows us through the day. His voice dropped lower. We are not afraid of you because we have already made peace with death. Every human you see has spent their entire life knowing they will die. We do not hide from this knowledge. We do not pretend it is not real. We carry it with us every moment of every day. Ciravel's blood ran cold. She tried to speak, but no words came. Your conquered species evolved in paradise, Admiral Cole said. They never had to face death. When you arrived, death was a stranger to them. They did not know how to react. They broke because they had never learned to bend. He smiled. And it was the most terrible thing Ciravel had ever seen. We have been dying since we first crawled out of the ocean, Ambassador. We have watched our loved ones fade away from diseases we could not cure. We have buried our children. We have killed each other in numbers that would make your entire fleet look small. We have faced extinction more times than we can count, and every single time, we have clawed our way back. He leaned in close. His breath was warm on her pale blue skin. You cannot threaten someone with death when death has been their constant companion since birth. You cannot scare someone who has already learned to live with fear. You cannot break someone who has spent their entire existence being broken and rebuilding themselves. Ciravel found her voice. It came out as a whisper. Then what are you? Admiral Cole straightened. He walked back to the window and looked out at the stars. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence, and we won. We did not just survive our planet. We became the most dangerous thing on it. And then, we reached for the stars. He turned to face her one last time. Your species has existed for 2 million years. You have conquered hundreds of worlds. You think you understand what it means to be powerful. He shook his head slowly. You have no idea what power is. You have never met a species that was forged in fire instead of shaped by peace. You have never faced an enemy that welcomes death as an old friend, instead of fleeing from it in terror. His voice hardened. You want to threaten us with extinction? We have been staring extinction in the face since before your species learned to walk upright. You want to show us destruction? We have destroyed ourselves 1,000 times and rebuilt ourselves from the ashes. You want to make us afraid? He smiled that terrible smile again. We are already afraid, Ambassador. We have always been afraid. But we learned a long time ago that fear is not an enemy. Fear is a weapon. And we have had millions of years to learn how to use it. He sat back down in his chair and picked up his glass. You are not scary, Ambassador. You are not special. You are not the first thing that has tried to destroy us, and you will not be the last. You are just next in line, just another predator that will learn what happens when prey decides to bite back. He raised his glass to her. Go back to your dominion. Tell them what you have learned. Tell them that humanity is waiting. And tell them this. We are not afraid of dying, but they should be afraid of killing us. Because we will make them pay for every drop of blood. We will make them remember us forever. And when it is over, one way or another, the galaxy will know that humanity was here. He drank. Ciravel sat in silence for a long time. Her hands were trembling. Her hearts were racing. She had come here to deliver an ultimatum to a primitive species. Instead, she had received one. And for the first time in her long career, she believed it. Ciravel returned to the Dominion with her report. She told them everything. She described the humans' strange calmness, their dark history, their relationship with death and fear. She warned them that this species was different, that the usual tactics would not work. The High Council laughed at her. They are primitives, the Supreme Commander said. His 4 arms spread wide in amusement. They have 800 ships against our 10,000. Their weapons are toys. Their bodies are fragile. We have crushed civilizations that spanned galaxies. What can one small species do against us? Ciravel tried to explain. She tried to describe what she had seen in Admiral Cole's eyes. That ancient coldness. That terrible acceptance. But the words sounded foolish even to her own ears. How could she explain that she was afraid of a species that should have been afraid of her? The Council dismissed her concerns. The invasion was ordered. 3 months later, the Dominion fleet arrived in human space. 10,000 warships against 800. It should have been over in days. It was not. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not form defensive lines around their homeworld. They did not try to protect their civilians first. They attacked. From the first moment, they attacked. Their ships were smaller and weaker, but they were also faster and more maneuverable. They came at the Dominion fleet in waves, targeting supply ships and communication relays. They used asteroids as cover. They set traps in nebulas. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the Vethkai could respond. And when their ships were damaged beyond repair, they did not flee. They did not surrender. They aimed for the largest enemy vessel they could find and rammed straight into it. The first time this happened, the Dominion commanders thought it was an accident. The second time, they thought it was desperation. By the 10th time, they realized it was a strategy. The humans were willing to trade their lives for theirs. One for one, ship for ship, crew for crew. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like this. Their previous conquests had always tried to minimize casualties. They had surrendered when defeat was certain. They had valued their lives above victory. The humans did not seem to value their lives at all. Or perhaps they valued something else more. 6 months into the war, the Dominion fleet was half its original size. They had destroyed hundreds of human ships, killed millions of humans, captured dozens of space stations and orbital platforms. By any normal measure, they were winning. But they were not winning fast enough. For every ship they destroyed, the humans built 2 more. For every station they captured, they found humans still fighting in the corridors. Not soldiers, civilians. Old men with welding torches, women with homemade explosives, children who had memorized the locations of every air vent and maintenance tunnel. The Veth-Kai boarding parties began to fear going onto human stations, not because of military resistance, because of what they found there. A grandmother who smiled as she detonated the grenade hidden in her walker. A shopkeeper who had rigged his store with poison gas. A teenager who had spent 3 days crawling through ventilation shafts, picking off Veth-Kai soldiers one by one with a stolen weapon. They were not trained warriors. They were ordinary people. And they fought like they had nothing to lose, because they had nothing to lose. Death was an old friend. Suffering was a familiar companion. The Dominion had come to threaten them with extinction, and the humans had simply shrugged and started fighting. The war dragged on. Months became a year. The Dominion kept winning battles, but they were losing the war. Every victory cost more than the last. Every conquered station became a trap. Every human prisoner became a potential threat, and the humans kept adapting. They studied captured Veth-Kai technology. They learned its weaknesses. They reverse-engineered weapons and shields and engines. Their new ships were better than their old ones. Their tactics became more sophisticated. Sci-Fi watched the war from a command ship, far from the front lines. She had been removed from active diplomacy after her report was ignored. Now she was just an observer, watching her predictions come true one by one. She was there when the first human ships appeared in Veth-Kai space. Not captured ships, human-built ships, using Veth-Kai technology they had learned in just 1 year. They came through the jump point like a swarm of insects, hundreds of them, moving with a coordination that the Dominion had never seen from this species before. They did not attack the military installations first. They attacked the food production facilities, the medical centers, the civilian shipping lanes. They did not try to destroy the Veth-Kai. They tried to starve them. It was a tactic the Dominion had used many times against others. They had never expected to be on the receiving end. The war turned. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. The Dominion recalled ships from human space to defend their home systems. The humans followed them. They struck at supply convoys. They destroyed fuel depots. They spread through Veth-Kai territory like a disease, and everywhere they went, they left a message, not in words, but in actions. This is what happens when you threaten us. This is what happens when you try to make us afraid. This is what happens when you underestimate the species that evolved on a death world. 5 years after the invasion began, the Dominion fleet was shattered. Their empire was in chaos. Species they had conquered for millennia were rising up, inspired by the humans who had fought back. The galaxy was burning, and the fire had been lit by a species that should have been nothing more than a footnote in history. Sci-Fi was captured during the fall of her homeworld. She was not mistreated. The humans were surprisingly gentle with their prisoners. They gave her food and water, and a clean cell. They asked her questions about the Dominion's structure and history. One day, a human diplomat came to see her. He was young and smiling, and he offered her tea. "Ambassador Sci-Fi," he said, "my name is David Chen. I have been assigned to negotiate the terms of your species' surrender." Sci-Fi felt a chill run through her body. The words were familiar. She had spoken similar words herself, 347 times. "We have studied your civilization," David Chen continued. "You have existed for 2 million years. You have built great cities and created beautiful art. You have conquered hundreds of species and built an empire that spans 6 spiral arms." He paused and took a sip of his tea. "Here is the thing, Ambassador. We are not like you. We do not want to rule your species. We do not want to enslave you or destroy you. We just want to make sure you never threaten us or anyone else again." He smiled that strange human smile. "You will surrender your weapons and your fleet. You will release all the species you have conquered. You will pay reparations to every world you have harmed, and you will learn to live in peace, or you will learn what humanity does to those who refuse." Sci-Fi stared at him. "And if we refuse?" David Chen's smile did not change, but his eyes became cold. That ancient coldness she had seen in Admiral Cole's eyes 5 years ago. Then we will do to you what you have done to others, and we will not stop until your species is a memory. We did not survive our death world by showing mercy to predators. He stood up and walked to the door. You have one day to decide. I suggest you choose wisely. He left. Sci-Fi sat alone in her cell, surrounded by the silence of defeat. She thought about everything that had happened, the warning she had given that no one had believed, the war that should have been easy, the impossible resistance of a species that refused to be afraid. She thought about Admiral Cole's words, spoken 5 years ago in a small office on a human ship. You are just next in line. Just another predator that will learn what happens when prey decides to bite back. He had been right. About everything. The next day, Sci-Fi recommended surrender. The Dominion Council, what was left of it, agreed. They had no choice. The humans had won. Years later, Sci-Fi became an ambassador again. But this time, she worked for the humans, not against them. She traveled the galaxy, meeting species that had been freed from the Dominion. She told them the story of humanity, the death world, the history of suffering, the species that had learned to make fear into a weapon. And she always ended with the same warning. They are kind, she would say. They are generous. They will help you rebuild and recover. But never forget what they are. Never mistake their kindness for weakness. Never threaten them or their friends. She would pause, and her eyes would become distant, remembering that night in Admiral Cole's office. They have made peace with death, she would say. They welcome the darkness like an old friend. And if you force them to fight, they will fight until one of you is destroyed. Not because they want to, but because that is what they are. That is what their world made them. She would look at her audience, and her voice would drop to a whisper. So when you see them smile, remember, they are smiling because they have already accepted the worst that can happen, and that is the most dangerous thing in the universe. The end.